Why didn't, I thought maybe you didn't hear me, but Bill wanted to come downstairs.
Jason had to show me something, and then I had to go upstairs and get the dishwasher started.
It's been so nice to have you folks here. Soon, even though I was half dead, I still enjoyed having you here.
What's that?
Your mother and father-in-law.
I owed that. I just happened to think I looked up and way back in around about 19,
That's up where, honey?
I owed that to Bill.
Oh.
Way back in that
You didn't know me then.
Daddy, tell me something. Tell me one more time,
Bill,
Daddy,
when we were growing up.
about growing up in.
Oh, I can't, Bill.
You sure?
No, when I do it, I want to do it right, and I don't want to have it half dead. So I'm gonna, after you go, someday when I feel real peppy, I'll just go ahead and make it up and send it to you.
Thank you, Penny.
It isn't very interesting, but it's history, you know.
Well, I think the most important thing that I can tell you, Daddy, is that you've given me and my family a strong testimony. You've given us a basis for us to build our testimonies on.
Well, everybody gets it themselves, honey.
That's right.
You know, you got it all yourself, and so
Sure.
did
But the seeds were planted.
oh yeah. Well, you see, Sue had seeds planted all around her, right up to her neck, you know. And then you had seeds planted, and
No, we're back to Grandma and Grandpa Nicholas.
Grandpa
Grandma and
Nicholas.
Grandpa Wade.
You know, I was talking to Bobby about, you think sometimes your children might be going astray or you worry about them. And Bobby says, but he's learned that it's not over till the fat lady sings. And while your kids are still here, if, they haven't arrived yet, they can still
Fat lady thing.
Yeah.
It's
not over until
have a chance.
It's not over until it's over.
That's right.
Like a ball game. It's not over until the last.
And so you can't ever give up on your kids.
Oh, I'll never give up on them. I'll hound you guys up and down the streets and everywhere.
If you folks knew how much these grandparents and parents plead with the Lord and pray about your kids and all of our children. We were having family prayer one night, and Paul and his wife stood down here to have family prayer with us, and Dad asked me to say it. And I guess that took her really long. I guess she doesn't pray very long. I was naming everyone, the great-grandchildren, all, and telling all of the problems they had. When I got through, she said, gee, Grandma, that's the first time I realized that grandparents and great-grandparents have big families to pray about.
Who was that?
Suzanne.
Oh.
I learned a long time ago that when my kids were rowdy and I knew that if we had a short prayer, they'd get up and play rowdy and I wanted to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that if you really concentrate on a prayer and give the full prayer, the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, by the time it's over, they're so calmed down and some of them are even sound asleep.
They always know their daddy whenever they start.
They get to hear
One
their
night-
dad's voice, and it's just drop off. I can even drop off.
One
When
night,
Billy and Sue talk together, I can drop
Brett.
off.
Brett and Ryan come down a lot of times to have family prayer with us, especially if the folks are out of town. And one night I was praying. I guess Brett was sitting watching the clock. I said, amen. He says, Grandma, you prayed for 19 minutes.
You know, it's even with Brett. Everything's got to be even, Steven. When he comes down, he kisses Grandma goodnight. He'll kiss her here, in the mouth, and here. And then he comes over and kisses me, and then he stops at the door. Wait a minute. How many, did I give you one here?
How many kisses did I
How
give
many did you
Grandma?
give?
I mainly give Grandpa.
So he has to come back and start all
That's why
over
I
so,
think it's such a
so he
good
doesn't miss
Jason.
one. They show their little hearts all in there.
They're not, they haven't been raised together, but they all have do the same thing.
Wow.
And that little Jason of yours is such a, oh, Lord, he is something.
He's a very deep thinker. When he went through that surgery and everything, he came home from the hospital that day, and he was really in bad shape. I mean, as far as
Oh, sure.
with his eye, and it was hurting him so bad driving in the car. Just every little bounce moved his eye, and he got up and he said he was going to church that day. He was determined. And he sat there all through that sacrament meeting after he had rode home all the way from the hospital, his first time out of the hospital.
It was Sunday
He went
morning we
home.
brought him home.
Changed his clothes and went to church.
Oh,
And
that's him all
he
right.
sat there like this all during church, but he sat through that meeting and I kept
That's
saying,
what he is.
Jason, are you all right? You sure you don't think you need to go home? No, this is where I'm supposed to be.
I was a little bit like Brett.
I said,
They're all so spiritual. That's
you
like
know, I said
just
to
amazing to me how spiritual all of our children are.
every one of them. And
Even Jeffrey going through all the problems he's
Yeah.
gone through, he's a very spiritual
that's
person.
built in there, you know, comes popping out. And when I asked Jason when he first come in before, I said, let me look at you, Jason. And I got close to the edge so I could see with the light. I said, now come here, let me look at your eye. And he was just grinning with this one eye, you know, you could see how he's smiling. And with this other guy, it looked pretty good to me. It looked like it was healed good, you know. But
You
I
can
got a
tell. He's
chance
got
to
a
do-
cataract right in the center of his eye,
Yeah.
though, on that eye. So
Even that's ripe enough to make you remove it.
but
the
he's
doctor
so
said he'd
lovely.
probably be 30 or 40 years old
Why?
before it was ripe enough or needed to be messed with. I don't know. He just said that it.
But the blessing that he received
Yeah,
promised him that that his family would see a miracle in his life,
It was awesome.
in his eyes.
Well, I wouldn't doubt it. As a little girl that was injured about the same time he was, she was coming up down her bike and the people had some railroad ties, up there, but they hadn't taken all the nails out. And there were two nails sticking out. And she lost control of the bike and went right into it and went into this eye.
Mm.
But she was given her blessing the same blessing.
who's that? Our
The little
Did it blind her?
brown girl.
brown
And that
girl?
eye she can't see yet, but she said, someday I will.
You know, just
They
think
have
a
a
piece
lot
of
of faith, I know that.
just think a piece of wood, you know, coming at you and you're on a bike, you can't.
That was a rusty nail, honey.
Huh?
That was a couple of nails.
Oh my gosh! With all the speed that way, and it was coming right up.
It all happened
to me,
so
it's
fast.
to me, it's a miracle that he has an eye left.
That's what the doctor has told me over and over. The specialist, he says, I can't believe that he can even see what he sees. So maybe that's the miracle.
Daddy, Sue hasn't heard about your experience about seeing your mother and of seeing the temple. Would you share that with her?
Well, I can tell you what it starts with. You know, Margaret in our family, to me, has always been the right hand of my mother. And mother had a great helper with Margaret. And when mother died, I mean, but I forget how it goes from the beginning.
Well, we were visiting at her place, and she said, we were talking about your mother. She said that mother came to her in a dream. It looked like she was in a snowbank outside of their house. Go ahead, honey.
Everything was white, you know. I wanted to get every bit of whatever she mentioned and felt. I wanted to get that out of Margaret, you know, because she's not a member. But evidently the Lord blessed her. That everything was around her was just as white as could be. Mother came in dressed in the robes, I guess. And she wanted Margaret to come with her, you know. And I don't know what the conversation had.
Well, Margaret said she told her mother that she couldn't come right now. She had too many things to do.
She said, I can't, Mother. I got too many things to do. So
Who saw this?
Yeah, Margaret.
Aunt Margaret.
And she told you about it?
Mhm.
and I was so glad that she was able to do that because in my own self, I was thinking, I said, if anybody in our family deserves to see Mother, it'd be Margaret, after she's gone. And that's what happened, and I was so glad that that happened that way. That she came to her
Keep on talking, Daddy.
in the
We're
way.
just playing, Bill.
And then later on, I wasn't jealous of it. I was glad. But it was on my mind a little bit, and I got to thinking, why couldn't I see Mother too, later, anytime? I was laying in bed like this. I don't know whether I was sleeping or not, or if anybody was in the room, but all of a sudden, to me, it sounded like these fellows are trying to get you to come back to life, with boom, some kind of a thing to put on your chest, gets you to start breathing. And I felt a great big boom on my chest, and I actually bounced in bed, it seemed like. And then all of a sudden, I left my bed, and I kept looking since I was laying this way. I was near the edge of the bed, and I kept looking over the side of the bed, wondering. I said to myself, what in the world is going on here? Hey, is it time yet? And while I was thinking all these things, I was going up this way. And then after a while, I got to a great big conduit right into the spirit world, I guess it was. I've often heard about a conduit right into heaven. And that was like a tunnel, big tunnel. And I went through there, flowed through there, and then I came out and on an opening. And when I came out of the opening, then instead of being laying this way, I was, this way.
Standing up.
Standing up. And I kept going and going and going. And all of a sudden, wham, I stopped dead still. And when I did so, I saw Mother. She was I would say about maybe 20 feet in front of me. And she was holding on to something, like holding on to a railing, looking down a Grand Canyon or something like that. But she was looking at me. We didn't have any conversation. But I remembered her dress, the way she was dressed, exactly the way she was dressed when she died. Mother always had a dress up, a blue dress she used for, fancy stuff. And she had a white collar and white cuffs and all. And she stood there. And
Did it appear to be blue, or did it appear to be bluish white?
it was blue, and then she had the white collar.
Dress she was buried in.
She always had that white collar.
Is it a dark blue?
No,
Dark blue, yeah, and white
not
collar.
real dark.
No.
It was kind of a brighter.
Well, anyway, then I looked at her, and she had a beautiful, one of the, you couldn't be any happier, inside of you, I'm so happy everything is all right, and now we know things, Mother was standing there front with a half smile, but real strong look. But she didn't say anything, but I said right away, I said loud, I said, Mutter, 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 in German. See? Ordinarily, I'd be saying it in English because everything is, my thoughts are in English and expression. It would come out English, but this time it was all German. I mean, real German. Mutter, Mutter, Mutter. 3 times, I said the Mutter, and that was it. And then I came back into my body. But it seems like always 3 times, that figure 3, like when President Young had a dream. Was it a dream?
He was dying.
Yeah, when he died, the last words of Brigham was 3 words again, like number 1, number 2, number 3. He said, Joseph, Joseph, Joseph. They were so close in life and so close. And there again with the 3 names, Joseph, Joseph, Joseph. See? And there were several other times whenever anybody spoke like that, was just for a short thing. It was always 3 words. And Brigham said, oh yeah, he says, Joseph seemed to be real happy, and he was so glad to see Brigham. They just talked back and forth a little bit, saying, hello, how's everything going? You know, about just a very few words. And then,
This was before he died.
On that occasion, 2 different occasions.
and then he said, he says, tell the brother. You know, he thought he'd have a great big long message for the people down here. And he says, Brigham, please tell the brethren to stay in the church and obey the gospel, obey the commandments of God. That's all he said. And then he went right to work again. He left Brigham right there standing, so to speak, and he had other things to do. So it must be awful busy or something.
I had an experience.
And Joseph Fielding Smith had something similar, and also Wilford Woodruff too.
She said she had an experience.
That's
too.
okay, let him go ahead. I was listening to it.
What?
Go ahead.
See, and it surprised me, of course, that I would holler out loud in German, you know, 3 times, instead of calmly saying it in English, mother, mother, mother. This is mutter, mutter, mutter. And the must have been that atmosphere that we had together while we were alive, you know. First come over, I spoke German, of course. I tried to use English as much as I could, whatever I heard, and I learned awful fast. I still can't understand how I learned English so fast. Somebody said, how long did it take you? When did you learn English? And if you asked me that, I couldn't say, well, let's see, about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It was there, you know. And Mother always sent me to the store. She knew that I could speak pretty good. If she had anything extra she wanted. We had a grocery man that always, in those days, they delivered the grocery to the house, you know. You probably did too, and, you know, take it right to the home. And they'd bring that up, and our stop was always the last stop up on the hill, way up there.
What town was this in?
This was in McKittrick.
And Sue, did you know they lived in, what town was it in Utah besides Green River? Moab?
Oh, that's one thing
I didn't live there, but mother lived there.
Oh, Mother lived there.
I didn't know. I never lived in Moab.
The only town in Utah that you lived in was for a short time Salt Lake City
Green River,
and Green River.
Eureka.
Oh, Eureka.
I lived in Eureka, a little while, a mining town. But there it was, you know.
Where's Eureka? Is that down? Is it there anymore?
So, on the right side behind me.
Is it still there?
Yeah, but
So that we went
she
down
needs
there.
a lot of renovation. The chapel is terrible.
We went down there to visit, you know. Eureka, you go through the town, and when you hit the end of the town, there's no more road. That's it. You know, the end of it. So I wanted to find out if I knew anybody. You know, you like to know, well, is so-and-so here? What happened to so-and-so and so-and-so? Of course, the man we talked to was a gas station man. And he was all right, but he wasn't too talkative. I asked about some of the people, especially the people that are working for Fitz's. The Fitz, the coal, not the coal mine, but the mine, Fitz, you know, where they had gold and silver.
That's right.
They had about 500 men working for them. It was a big mine.
Pardon?
They underdug Eureka's all nothing but tunnels under Eureka. It's wondered it wouldn't drop down, you know, with all the cavity and with all the holes underneath.
Eureka is a road in middle and cliffs on each side, and the houses are built on it. Sides like that.
Real mining town, huh?
Fitz's was they had gone, I think one of the boys, must have been one of Fitz's oldest boys, moved to Salt Lake. So there's one of the Fitz boys from Salt Lake, and they had a girl named Maud.
Is she the one that was retarded?
No, Maud wasn't, but somebody that was married to one of the boys.
Oh,
Somebody's married. They had a retarded little girl that was retarded, and she was still living there in the house,
when we went there?
Yeah. Remember, we couldn't get in the gate. They always had a great big gate slammed shut, and she was still there. It was a pitiful thing, but and I think I know the woman pretty well. From just being around her a little bit, she was a really good woman. She took care of that little girl, and Mr. Fitch, of course, he died. He came from England, and Mrs. Fitch, they both came from typical English, with a monocle and all that. He'd come down, and Herbert was their chauffeur. He'd go to Salt Lake instead of taking the train. I'd had to get the Cadillacs all ready and get them cleaned out and restuck and real good, Herbert, who took care of the engine, was always running good because we had the big garage there. We had 1, 2, 3 cars. We had 2 Cadillacs. We had a Buick that belonged to the family that we took care of. And Mr. Fitch would get up once in a while and he'd ask Herbert to drive him to Salt Lake. And one time, Bert was going pretty good speed. In those days, it didn't go so fast, but if you were going 50 miles an hour, you were going pretty good speed. And out came this wagon with a load of hay. The farmer didn't look either one way or the other way, and he smacked right into the middle of that hay load. Hay is when it's baled, it's pretty heavy. So it sort of messed the car up, on top, but it didn't break anything. It didn't kill the horses. The horses are all right. The wagon, I think, turned sideways. So they finally got that fixed. Remember that time. And then Bert went from Salt Lake, from Eureka. He went to Salt Lake looking for a little bit better kind of work. And he went from Salt Lake to Layton. And Layton had I think a Chevrolet agency. Bishop Layton had that agency there and sold trucks and cars, and he kept the cars running. So Herbert worked for him for quite a little while, got it all fine. And then Margaret was working for Judge Stevens. She got a job in Salt Lake working for Judge Stevens, and the judge was, I don't know if he's a member or not, but he was a real nice person. And he said, Margaret, I want you to go back to school again. That kind of the fatherly interest, some total stranger. So Margaret got ready and she went up to, she says, you can come here, whatever you need, you can stay here whenever you want, but you can go to school, and if I can give any help, and I guess he must have helped her get a scholarship because she went to the agricultural college in Logan, and Bert, he worked there too, and in his spare time, he went to school. So that they each had 2 years of college there in Logan. And then from then on, at that time, Mother was in Moab, still working with the cleaning establishment. She sold the business and asked Bert and Margaret to come along and put money Mother had saved up. They put it all in the pot so they could go to school. And it was costly to find a place to live and to get arranged in school and get set to get to know people. But they enjoyed those 2 years. They really enjoyed it. And Margaret, she always went to church with her, but it was just on the surface, not too much depth to it, just on the surface. And she was never baptized. She was a little bit reluctant to talk about the church. She was a little bit feisty when it came to that. But,
Was that after she was married or before?
that was before she was married. She had just finished school in Cambridge, Nancy. We moved out to Boston first, and from Boston we moved to Cambridge. Well, we moved right across from MIT. They had those apartments. We moved in there a while, and that wasn't too satisfactory. So then we moved out to Belmont. And we stayed in Belmont, I think, 4 years. Margaret spent 4 years at Radcliffe, and Bert spent 4 years at MIT. So that gave 4 more years to me.
Did you go to MIT too?
Yeah, but I didn't finish.
How much did you like?
He said I had to pass the examination. See, Margaret and Herbert didn't have to pass the examination to get in because they had the 2 years of college already, which I didn't have. I didn't even have, I would say, about a 6th grade deal, which wasn't too good. He admit that. Margaret saw to it. She took me while they were going to school. I went to Belmont High School, and we doubled up on everything. Well, we'll give you a 4-year course in 2 years. She went over and talked to not professor, but Principal Calmer. He was nice to help arrange what I should take. And I remember it took a 4-year course in 2 years. And even then, that didn't put me in. I still had to go down and take the examination. And it wasn't easy. It was all math, most of it, except for the languages. The language I got by easy. Professor Vogel, we spoke German the minute I went into his office. He had me read German. I could read German. I could still read it now and speak it. So he said, okay, you're all set for languages. And I don't know how I ever got by in chemistry. I must have. And I took that examination in plane geometry, solid geometry, college algebra, physics, trigonometry, and then of course they had the English, which they didn't pay too much attention. I think I flunked English, but they didn't put too much stress on that because it was a technical school. See? But it was a beautiful school. We had 300. It was 300 a year, which wasn't much. Like now, it's almost what is it?
It was a lot then, though.
And I bought my book secondhand. I went down and every book I needed, I forget who wrote it up for me. I think that Principal Conry out at high school wrote me a list that I needed to go down to the secondhand bookstore and get, these books. And I got those books and they were all right. One was messed up a little bit, but the rest of them was pretty, whoever used them pretty nice. So I saved a little money there. But I enjoyed that time there in Cambridge. Made a lot of new friends. Of course, Herbert was the only one that belonged to the church. And usually, after you leave a spot, then the missionaries start looking for you after you left Logan. And they finally found out where he was, and they come up to our little apartment, and both of them, all dressed up, always in black, white shirts, ties, hat, briefcases, big smile. And they come up to visit Bert, not me. So another little man, she was very friendly to the missionaries. Come on in, sir. Have some supper, so we set the table for all of us. And we talked. And while we were talking, of course, the missionaries were all full of enthusiasm. They wanted to talk about some of their experience, which was nice. And even though I didn't understand, I seemed to know this is it, it was all right, perfect. This is all right. This is great. And then they made up a street meeting, so we went down. We used to have street meetings in those days. Go out in the street, sing a song, have a prayer, and then the missionaries get out. Usually two elders, maybe two missionary ladies. I remember the first time I went down, it was the Boston Common, big park down there, and it was winter.
Are you sleeping? Uh-huh.
It was winter, and we found a sort of a suitable spot of low snow. We shook the snow off the benches, made a place for us to stand, and they started singing, and they had prayer. Then the missionaries talked. I still don't remember what they talked about, but still in my heart I had a feeling, okay, that's perfect. Oh, I couldn't tell you what it was. And the missionary ladies, they talked, and Herbert and Mark and I, we just stood there. But that, to me, that was a waste of time because, I don't know, they didn't, in the first place it was cold. People wouldn't stop. In the second place, Boston at that time was pretty hard. They weren't against the Mormons, but they could care less, But after we got taught that first meeting, I remember there was about maybe 10 or 12 people that stayed there and listened to us standing up. And when the meeting was over, we closed with prayer. There was one man stayed behind. And of course, he talked with the elders, not to me. Whatever they talked about seemed naturally was the gospel. So at least they got one contact out of it. But that, in a way, it was fun. Street meetings. Then in Detroit, we had one street meeting too, downtown. That was sort of hard because the streetcars were making noise, and the elders tried to talk loud enough, and it wasn't easy. But it was fun. But all through there, I was thinking a lot about myself. How is it that everything that they said or whatever happened that seemed to be right in the middle, I wanted, that it was all right, see? Although I couldn't tell you why until I read the Book of Mormon, and then of course that opened up the whole business.
You were just being conditioned for it.
Yeah. And I remember I worked at night. I used to come home at 11 o'clock and hardly wait to get home to clean up, wash up, jump in bed and turn on the lights and get the Book of Mormon out and read it. And I read it till I couldn't read long and not get too tired and I'd fall asleep. So it took me at least about maybe a month to read the Book of Mormon. But I remember when it was over with, I had a real sad feeling come over me. Real sad, like it was among people I felt that I was almost marching along with those people. I was talking to Moroni and Mormon. I felt like they were all there, you know. And I felt that when I turned the page and closed the book, I had that terrific, deep, sad feeling.
But you didn't want it to be over.
Yeah. And I remember I held the book and then I closed it and sort of made a noise, click, and I held on to it. And it said, I wish there was more. I wish there was more. See? And then, of course, I knew then it says, but I know now that there will be more, you know, the rest of the translations. Yeah. But now that's those times, those minutes we spent together, that I spent together with the Book of Mormon, and Herbert never encouraged me to read it. In fact, I don't think he ever read it. But he had it laying around on the top of my dressing room, of course.
He was a member of the church, though, wasn't he?
Yes. He was baptized by Bishop Mercury in Layton, Utah. But Margaret used to go all the time whenever they had any parties, and she went to the Relief Society, she told me, and she went to the sacrament service, but that's about it, you know.
Wonder why she never joined.
Margaret had a, I tried to figure that out, why she didn't join. And the missionaries visited her once she was married and she moved out to New Hampshire. They came out there and visited her. Now, I
She
don't
probably
know.
didn't join after she was married because he was Jewish.
Yeah, and he was very friendly. He was more friendly than Margaret was to the missionary. But something must have happened during the lessons that irked Margaret. Maybe they made her feel that she was dumb and didn't know anything about, you know, that could, because some missionaries are not very diplomatic. Some, I mean, not all, but some.
I said something pertaining to Jewish religion or something, too.
Yeah, and she never public before. They probably asked her to pray, and she, you know, that's what came to my mind, and that irked her all the way through.
Probably scared her.
But she's all right now. She up there with Mother and Herbert, Carl,
Who is?
Margaret.
Margaret's not dead.
Oh,
yet.
she's not dead yet, no. I'm putting her
You're putting her in her grave before she's there.
already. Well, it's so close to me. It's every day I feel that I'm going to get a telegram or a letter that Margaret passed away. Because she was 93. And she wasn't too strong then. But the last telephone we got, I think we called her, and her voice was strong. She says, well, this woman that I have comes in once a week to clean up, and then they come and visit me once in a while to see if I'm all right. And then she still has her little Volvo that she kept, a beautiful blue car. She had special inside made with blue upholstery, green like a doll play. And she loved that little Volvo. And of course she couldn't drive anymore, so the woman had come to clean. And that day she'd take the car and Margaret would go with her. And they'd go out shop, you know. Margaret had a chance to get away from the house. But there she was up there all alone for all those years. It's a long time.
Yeah, it is.
But I enjoyed every day of my life, and I thank the Lord for being able to be here. Who's this guy coming in here?
Jason, don't be smoke through the house.
Oh, this guy. I love you, honey. Don't forget.
Huh?
Don't forget, Dumbo. I always love you
I
forever.
love you too.
And ever and ever.
Never, never, never.
So, all in all, as far as the church goes, I'm sure Margaret will, Because she asked me one time, she said, what about the resurrection, Paul? When she never did want to talk about the gospel. And I didn't open up the conversation, but she did at this time. So, Paul, what resurrection do you think I'll come out? And, she knew a little bit about the resurrections. And I says, Margaret, I'm not a judge, but I know this much. Knowing the things that you've done and that you've kept us all together. And you've been a good woman all your life. You raised 2 fine children and did everything you could. And I said, if anybody deserved, as far as I'm concerned, you'd be way ahead of me as far as the resurrection goes, for as good as you've been. So I'll say you'll come forth in the first resurrection.
What'd she say to that, Daddy?
I don't remember. It just seemed to hang, and then sort of dwindle away. So we didn't get a chance to dig into it. And she was very feisty. She hated losing arguments. Even little cracker stuff, She'd get really flustered because I was right, she was wrong, and she knew I was right. And she wasn't about to, let that come in. But Margaret, on her heart, she did about everything. And Herbert, I don't know if there ever was a better man that lived on earth than Herbert. He was good, clear down to the boots, morally, physically, everywhere. Because I knew him, I lived with him for many years. And now when I go back and memories come back, and I think how beautiful it was, how we used to get together after we come home from school. We'd have a little lunch or soup, and then we'd get together and we'd walk. There was a little park out there in Belmont where we lived. I would say about a 4-mile circle, and we'd walk around that together and talk about inventing things. We were working on an invention together. The automatic valve adjuster, of course. We always have something to talk about on that score. He was a good man, boy, and so was Carl. He'll be right up in the first row. Carl, that's my next brother. He was clean morally, physically, and spiritually, as far as I could tell.
He never had a chance to hear the gospel, did he?
No, I'm trying to figure out how that worked.
Did he come to Utah with you?
Well, he was with us in Utah. Oh, yeah. He was with us in Greenery, in that house. Of course, Herbert hadn't joined the church until he got to to Logan. So then when he went to the church, then he asked for baptism after he says, I heard Apostle Talmadge talk, and I knew it was the truth. That's about as far as he went. And I don't think he ever studied the Book of Mormon. And then we sort of drifted apart for no reason that I can think of, except that we were together 20 years, a long time. And of course, in the meantime, he contacted some of his friends there, and of course, they knew he was a Mormon, and usually some of them they try to take and make digs at him, make fun and stuff, and he was beginning to dwindle as far as the testimony he had. Although he had that iron rod in the beginning, I could see that he was hanging on to it, but he wasn't doing anything. So then when he came to visit us in California, in down there on that street where we lived, Oxnard. Came in there and he was reluctant about knocking at the door. He didn't know what kind of a welcome he would get from me. Well, he should know, my gosh, that we'd be just like this. Come in and we talked. And I drove him around. I took him to Carl's house, to Bobby's house, and I took him downtown to watch some of the shows. And I took him up the Capitol Records upstairs, and I got to meet Carl and to meet his secretary and to meet the people that he was working with. And that impressed him very much. But going down to the tower, I always had pamphlets in my car, and the one was a top pamphlet was Joseph Smith's testimony. It was always right there where I could reach it. And I gave him this. I said, Bert, while we're going down there, it'll take us about maybe 20 minutes to get down there and park and get up to the tower. And I gave him the pamphlet, and he opened it up and he read it. And I thought to myself, I better not breathe too much for fear he might stop reading. So it's like you held your muscles still. I hope he keeps on reading. I hope he keeps on reading. And of course, he did. And he said, he said, this is it.
Go take care, Jake. He's been really a pest and upsetting the girls.
So he said, Paul, I said, what's the testimony of the prophets, And he put it in his pocket. Wait till I get back to Florida. I'll tell that guy. Somebody that was rubbing him the wrong way, I guess. He says, now I know I'll be able to explain it to him. He had no knowledge of the gospel to be able to explain it to anybody, Until 20 years, the spark was still there, and all of a sudden, he himself read the testimony. Every word of it that's given in that little pamphlet. And he felt so comfortable. I could see there was a different, altogether, a calmer feeling came over him. And he almost cried when he said goodbye. He said, to think that we wasted all those years, 20 years. We'd see each other maybe once in a while. He'd come to Detroit, visit and say hello.